Welcome back. The new coronavirus seems to be spreading rapidly as the death toll rises to 41 with nearly 1,300 confirmed cases. Authorities have locked down more than 13 cities in China, affecting 36 million people. Authorities in the city of Heiko say they will begin a 14-day medical observation of tourists coming from the Hubei province. They will not be allowed to leave their hotels, where they will be monitored. China's government has also sent 450 military medical staff to Hubei. The virus, which first appeared at a market in the city of Wuhan, has now spread as far as France, Canada, Australia and Malaysia.
As you will be now aware, the first confirmed positive case has now been detected in Australia. A Chinese gentleman from Wuhan travelled to Melbourne last Sunday on a flight on the 19th, on flight CZ321 from Guangzhou, and he was well when he arrived but developed an illness during last week and is currently in a stable condition under isolation in a hospital in Melbourne.
Authorities in Beijing and other cities have also cancelled some celebrations and events to mark the Lunar New Year. Now moving on to Turkey, where 22 people are killed after a 6.8 magnitude earthquake jolted eastern part of the country. The Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency said over 1,000 people were injured. Officials say the epicenter is in Elazığ province at a depth of 6.7 kilometers. They say search and rescue operations have begun and the death toll could rise. Hundreds of residents are left homeless or with damaged homes. The Turkish Red Crescent has set up a crisis desk in Ankara. The earthquake was felt in neighboring provinces as well as Syria, Iran and Lebanon. World leaders, including Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and Canada's Premier Justin Trudeau, have sent condolences. 11 people have been killed after rebels shelled the northwestern Syrian city of Aleppo. The Russian Center for Reconciliation in Syria claims 30 others were wounded in the attacks. It said a detachment of 70 rebels with heavy machine guns attacked government positions. Russian officials say they attempted to drive soldiers away from south of the Benyamin area. They said the attack was foiled by tanks and small arms fire, after which the insurgents retreated. Aleppo province is part of the de-escalation zone, where Turkey and Russia broke a deal ended hostilities earlier this month. In Somalia, 2 soldiers have been killed and 6 others wounded after a roadside bomb blasted targeted a military vehicle in Sabbail region. Meanwhile, 3 children died of hunger in Mogadishu's internally displaced camps. Police said the vehicle was traveling from Jowhar to Balad district. It said the wounded soldiers were airlifted to Balad district hospital. No group has yet claimed responsibility for this attack. In another development, hunger and poor housing conditions claim the lives of 3 children. People living in the camps have sought help from the government and humanitarian agencies. Sudan's ruling council and a rebel group have signed a preliminary deal on political and security arrangements. Officials say they pact attempts to integrate anti-government militias into the government army and produce a single military. The deal grants special status to 2 regions that are now partly under the control of rebel groups. South Kordofan and the Blue Nile will be able to write their own laws. Government representatives signed the agreement with the People's Liberation Movement at a ceremony overseen by South Sudan President Salva Kiir. The ruling council and rebel groups restarted peace talks last October to end the years-long conflicts. A transitional government was put in place following the fall of veteran autocrat Omar al-Bashir last year. In a positive development, the US has appreciated steps taken by Pakistan for the Afghan peace process. In a briefing in Washington, US Envoy for South Asian Affairs Alice Wells said Islamabad has important leverage to promote lasting security and stability in Afghanistan. She said the meeting between President Donald Trump and Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan in Davis shows progress in bilateral ties. Wells said during her visit to Pakistan, she held extensive conversations with the country's leadership on bolstering economic partnership. She also praised Islamabad's efforts to meet its counter-terrorism financing obligations under the Financial Action Task Force. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says the world is now acknowledging the fascist ideology being imposed in occupied Kashmir and India. New Delhi has clamped down the valley for the last 174 days, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis. In his recent tweet, Khan said the anti-democratic policies of Prime Minister Narendra Modi are the biggest threat to regional peace. He said 8 million Kashmiris and Muslims in India are suffering due to Modi's fascism. Khan shared an article published by the world-renowned publication The Economist on India's intolerance and how Modi is endangering the country's democracy. US billionaire and philanthropist George Soros has slammed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the crisis in occupied Kashmir. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Soros said nationalism has made headway and the biggest setback was seen in India. Soros said Modi is imposing punitive measures on the occupied valley. He said the democratically elected Narendra Modi is creating a Hindu nationalist state in India. Soros said Modi is threatening to deprive millions of Muslims of their citizenship through a controversial act. Thousands of protesters have come out on streets in the Indian state of Goa against the Citizenship Amendment Act. The massive rally was the first demonstration backed and organized by the Goa Church. Demonstrators chanted anti-Modi slogans and made rousing speeches against the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. The protesters demanded the state assembly to revoke the controversial act. The speaker said imposing new law will end in the second partition of India. In Myanmar, 2 women, one of whom was pregnant, have been killed and 7 others wounded after the army shelled a Rohingya village in Rakhine State. The attack comes 2 days after the International Court of Justice ordered the country to protect its minority. Anti-government politicians said shells fired by a nearby battalion hit the village of Kintaung in the middle of the night. They claimed there was no fighting and the army simply fired artillery at the village. Almost 750,000 Rohingya Muslims fled to Bangladesh after a military massacre in 2017. Now moving on to UK, whose Prime Minister Boris Johnson has signed the Brexit withdrawal agreement at Downing Street, London. The bill will take the UK out of the European Union on January 31st. It is a process that has taken 2 consecutive governments under 2 different prime ministers and over a year to pass in Parliament. Johnson said it is a great moment for the country, finally delivering the result of the 2016 referendum. The Prime Minister said he hoped it will bring an end to years of arguments and division. Earlier, EU leaders signed the document in Brussels before it was transported to London by train. The European Parliament will vote on the agreement on January 29th. In the US, Democrat lawmakers have warned President Donald Trump will abuse his power again if he is not removed from the office. At Trump's Senate impeachment trial, lawmakers described Trump as a threat to democracy. Democrats said Trump abused his office by pressuring Ukraine to investigate 2020 presidential candidate Joe Biden. They said the president obstructed Congress by barring witnesses and withholding documents. The Democrats have called Trump a monarch.
But I was struck by the irony of the idea when we're talking about a president who would make himself a monarch, that whoever that was would use the terminology of a penalty that was imposed by a monarch.
Last month, the House of Representatives passed 2 articles of impeachment, setting the stage for a trial in the Senate. Trump denies any wrongdoing and describes the impeachment as a hoax. Now, US President Donald Trump has unveiled the logo of Space Force, the newly established sixth branch of the American Armed Forces. Space Force was set up in December with the signing of the annual Defense Policy Bill. Trump said the logo was unveiled after consultations with military leadership and designers. The establishment of the force has been Trump's priority since 2018. Space Force's goal is to protect US military assets in space from potential threats from Russia and China. The US says 34 of its soldiers have been diagnosed with brain injuries following Iran's strikes on a military base in Iraq earlier this month. Speaking to reporters, Pentagon spokesperson Jonathan Hoffman says 8 soldiers sent to Germany have arrived in the US for further treatment. President Donald Trump and other top officials initially said the Iranian attack caused no casualties or damage. Last week, the US military said 11 troops had been treated for symptoms of concussion. Tehran carried out the attack in response to the US killing of General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad on 3rd January. The EU says it has extended the time available to discuss ways of saving the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. This was confirmed by EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell in a statement. Borrell said there is agreement that the complexity of the issues demands more time to solve them. He said the timeline is now being extended after a dispute mechanism was triggered by France, Germany, and Britain. Borrell said the Joint Commission regulating the deal will meet next month. On 14th January, London, Paris, and Berlin formally accused Tehran of violating the deal. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. War-inflicted Yemen is struggling with the outbreak of dengue. The disease has infected hundreds of children as the ongoing war impedes efforts to fight the world's fastest spreading virus. The World Health Organization has also shown concerns over the spread of the disease. More in this report.
In crowded hospitals, an unhygienic atmosphere only increases the problems faced by Yemen's children. Workers are struggling to clean an insect-filled pool of stagnant rainwater gathering in the battered port city of Hodeidah.
Dengue has been spreading fast these days, and when you have not 1, 2, 3, but 4 patients, where can you go? The private hospitals are very expensive and we can't afford it.
The World Health Organization says dengue is one of the world's top 10 public health threats.
Well, in 2019, there was more than 76,000 suspected cases of dengue across Yemen, with 271 associated deaths. When it comes to areas that are most affected, the governorate of Hodeidah has been seeing, for example, 70% of all alerts end of 2019. So this is the area that is the most affected, and at the same time, it's an area of active fighting.
An aid organization claims they are receiving reports of deaths on a daily basis from remote areas. Local authorities say they are struggling to control the outbreak of the disease.
The measures that were taken are to fill all the swamps in cooperation with the local authorities. Yesterday and the day before in Hodeidah, the cases have decreased in the countryside and we have filled up and closed the majority of the swamps.
There is no specific treatment and no widely available vaccine for dengue. Yemen's civil war, now in its 5th year, has killed over 100,000 people. The United Nations has described the country's situation as one of the world's worst humanitarian crises.
A positive development for Pakistan's tourism industry, as the United Kingdom has declared the country safe for travellers due to the improved security situation in the country. In a statement, British High Commissioner Christiane Turner said the UK has changed its travel advice after reviewing the country's security situation. You can find out more about this in this report.
Pakistan's improved security situation has drawn the world's attention to the country's stunning beauty and cultural diversity. In January, Forbes magazine ranked Pakistan among 10 coolest places to go to in 2019. followed the recent visit by the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Now the UK has softened its travel advice to its citizens visiting Pakistan. Among other changes, the advice now allows for the travel by road to the country's northern areas as well as the Kailash and Bamburet valleys. Turner said the British nationals will now be able to see more of what Pakistan has to offer.
Thanks to improvements in the security situation, the UK has changed its travel advice for Pakistan. Among other changes, the advice now allows for travel by road to the north of the country. This builds on the successful visit of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and the return of British Airways. It is great credit to the hard work of the government of Pakistan to improve security. I myself am excited to visit more of Pakistan and am delighted that British nationals will be able to see more of what Pakistan has to offer.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi welcomes the UK's move. The recent developments mean that the country's tourism sector is now poised to pick up and will perform better in the year 2020.
In China, Lunar New Year celebrations have been subdued by the spread of the coronavirus, but some have still managed to revel in the festivities. In Beijing, the 2020 Spring Festival Gala was staged to a selected audience and broadcast globally. Let's find out more in this report.
China is marking the new lunar year, one of the most important dates in its calendar. This is the time of the year dedicated to cultural celebrations and family reunions. But this year, it's different, as concerns grow about the coronavirus outbreak. However, a state media group in Beijing managed to host a festive gala to selected audiences. The Spring Gala Festival featured a mix of comedy acts, songs, acrobatic performances, and magic shows. Wearing colorful dresses, Chinese characters greeted New Year to all those watching the live broadcast at home. The performances also focused on the country's ongoing battle against the epidemic. Similar celebrations were held in Zhengzhou City in central China's Henan Province and Greater Bay.
Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.